I want to ask you, when you got a chance to step back and see it from a whole, and you saw like your strength in it, what was your strength and what you saw was lacking, or with that year that you had to see it all from a spectrum?
Well, it's interesting because I started on a very conventional path, right? So I wanted to be a newspaper writer when I was a kid. I was like, great, I grew up in the DC area, the Washington Post was a kick-ass newspaper. I had great idols of people I loved to read. Michael Wilbon, Tony Kornheiser were writing for the Washington Post when I was a kid. So I would read them and look up to them and want to be like them. It was just a great paper and a great thing to aspire to be. And I got to work there. I got to work there when I was in my 20s, and it was amazing. And
At
it
the
was
Post?
at the Washington Post,
Oh, wow.
and I was covered beats, and I covered hockey, I covered basketball. I sort of did all the conventional stuff, and I thought that was going to be my path. Newspapers changed. This country changed. The internet changed newspapers, right? Newspapers are not what they used to be. It became very clear when I was in my 20s that actually television was much more of a path to getting to cover the stories I wanted to cover, have the opportunities I wanted, because there was more money for a budget to send me places. I mean, it was really that simple. The idea of being on television wasn't something I ever intended or wanted. It was kind of a means to an end of, well, if I want to go talk to the people I want to talk to, if I want to go to the games I want to see and be at and experience and tell these stories, I'm going to have to make a move to TV. So again, it was a little bit of a conventional path of, okay, I'm going to start out being a reporter with my microphone like this, and I'm going to do my thing. But I was already coming from it from such a different place because I didn't go to broadcast school. I didn't have broadcast training. I didn't look or talk like broadcast people talked. I'm not blonde, I'm not tall, I'm not very glossy. I'm like much more just conversational, right? On TV, I don't have the sort of polish that like natural TV. Well, I don't, and that's fine. I'm very comfortable with that. I like being more real. I don't want to be sort of distant and that kind of thing. But it was different. It was very different for people to adjust to. And there was definitely people at the networks I was at who, oh, why aren't you more like our regular thing? I remember very clearly Stuart Scott sitting me down at one point and telling me, everyone tried to tell me to be like the more typical news anchor. He said, I was never going to be very good trying to pretend to be Dan Patrick, right? He said, I'm Stuart Scott. I come from a different place. I speak different. I think different. I talk different. I have different references. If I tried to be Dan Patrick, he said, I would be 70% of Dan Patrick and I wouldn't be very good and I wouldn't make it on TV. He's like, I can be 100% of Stuart Scott. So why don't I just try to do that? And it was an incredible piece of advice and an incredible conversation. And it taught me that I shouldn't just try to be like everybody else who was around me, because I looked different. I had a different background. I saw stories differently because I always saw them as a writer. So I would sort of have those conversations differently. And to lean into that, be 100% of that instead of being the other stuff. And that is what kind of set me on the path of, as you say, a hybrid of being a little different and saying, okay, well, I'm not just a reporter. I'm an observer of what's going on. I've been in and around the game for so long. The next step after being a reporter at ESPN and SportsCenter and all of that stuff was, and a sideline reporter for Monday Night Football and all the different things I did was, I don't just want to watch and I don't want to just ask other people what they think. And frankly, Kevin, I didn't want to just sit around my entire career and ask men what they thought. I thought that I've been in this game and covering these sports for a long time. What I have to say should start to count as much as the guys I work with who have been at that same level for that same time. I want to be able to be in a place where I can use my voice and not just what I have, but the analysis I have of what the things I observe mean. And that's when I really started to change how I thought about what I should be doing. I left ESPN to go to TNT and CNN, started a show at CNN that was the first show I ever had of my own that was sort of a way of looking at things a little bit differently.
Congratulations.
And from there, when I went back to ESPN to do the jump, it was a very different conversation and a very different anchor role than the typical just, a lot of times in those shows, it's the point guard passes the ball. And again, it's a bunch of asking men what they think for the women in those spots. And I didn't want to be that person. So when we started the jump, it was very much, I would say my piece at the beginning of the show, that it was an equal situation of sort of different opinions. And I hope, and you can tell me, I was always very deferential to the players of knowing a lot more than any of us observers ever knew. So it wasn't about like, oh man, I'm equal to the players who have been there, because that's not ever how I felt. It felt more of, hey, I have this very specific thing to give. that they had the position of playing the game. I had this position of watching and observing and comparing different guys from different eras at different times. I can give that opinion. I can give that analysis as opposed to just asking them what they think. And that is how I approached what I'm doing here at Showtime after getting to sit out for a little bit and just sort of take stock again of what do I want to do in the next thing. It's a little bit of what I have been doing, which is to be a voice of my own sort of analysis and opinion, a little bit of getting to ask, investigate, and kind of be curious about all these interesting people in sports that we want to be able to talk to and talk about. And then also...
Just sports?
For me right now, yeah. I mean, I love it, man. It's still so good. I'm not done at all with the sports stuff. I love it.
I see you so crossed over, though. You see sports figures now like musicians.
I know, but I love this shit.
Musicians are like politicians.
I
but
know it.
Politicians
I know
are
it.
like, think about the corporate America, all these CEOs that want to be personalities now and get their...
I know, I don't...
You cross all of it.
I do, but I've done entertainment stuff, I've done news stuff, but there is nothing to me like sitting and watching and being part of this world and the games. And the thing that I have sort of wanted to add coming back and having this opportunity here, and we've been talking about this a lot off camera, is, okay, it's not just changing the game of like what you say and do on camera, it's how you're shooting it, where you're putting it.
Yeah.
What does it look like? Is it broken down like this? Is it like this? Is it like that? Is it going here or is it going here, 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 and here? And what time is it on? Who gives a fuck what time it's on? Because I can call it up on my TV or my phone whenever I want to.
Absolutely.
So to me, that's the addition of the next step of my evolution, is trying to figure out with people like you and learn how are we gonna put these conversations out? Where should people find them? What should they look like? And that's a whole hybrid we get to figure out together.
Wow. And you know what I label that as? The new media.
Well, there you go.
I say that the new media includes all of what you just mentioned. How much of the digital in streaming is going to change everything we know about television or how we watch everything that we watch?
Well, it already has. And it's so interesting to see the tracking of eyeballs, which is how people always talk about ratings, right?
Yeah.
So when you do a show on linear, regular television, it goes out into the air, and sometimes it lives for a couple days on some sort of other platform, but you're just producing so many of them, it's not like they get saved, right?
It's a wave, so it's doing
it
this.
just kind of whatever. When I used to work in newspapers, my editor would say, what you're writing today will line people's bird cages tomorrow, Rachel, so don't ever think that don't ever get too invested in it. And a lot of live television is like that, right? You're going out, you're putting a pregame show on the air, right? I mean, I love, look, with TNT, what they guys do after a game, it's phenomenal. What you used to do with them after a game is phenomenal. It's not like that lives in posterity for anyone to go back to 2 months later, right? They don't know. Maybe there's a clip on YouTube of like one discussion that they found somewhere.
Or a word I fucked up, equilibrium.
Exactly.
Or equivalent, excuse me. Go ahead.
Right, but even before, but that's actually, even just that is the YouTube streaming part of it. So before that, it was nothing, it was nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Now we live in a world where if you're putting stuff out, not for linear TV, but you're putting it out like we are here at Showtime, if you're putting it out for streaming, someone can go back and say, man, I heard KG talk to John McEnroe. Like, let me go find that. You can find it in 20 seconds, and I can watch the entire thing. I can see your whole conversation. That is a completely different way to consume stuff if you're a viewer, if you're a fan, and it's a completely different way to produce stuff. Because I know as we sit here and have this conversation, if you're watching this 6 years from now, it's because you can find it. And it's there. But that's not true if you and I talked, like even at the last show I did on ESPN, you came on with Adam Sandler when you guys were promoting the movie. There's like 20 seconds of a clip of that somewhere, but our whole conversation isn't anywhere. So we're all gonna be watching this down the road. And that changes how many people see it, right? And it changes sort of the structure of what we're talking about. That's fascinating to me. The new media aspect of that is fascinating to me.
And I think in any new script, you start to see where you can actually own your own or create your own brand. You know, you being out a year, I'm just being 100 with you. I saw I saw where this whole thing lacked you.
No.
I see where a bunch of pretenders came in. I'm just being 1 million. I saw a bunch of pretenders and, people that look like you, act like you, sound like you, if you had your eyes closed or if you was listening. So you created a script here, whether you wanted to or not. And I like to think that you've influenced not just women, but reporting. And I think you set the precedent to journalism. I'm curious to know, with that brand, like I'm saying this very, very fluently, but I don't see you just doing athletes. I like your conversation with athletes, but I like you. I want to see you talk to Quavo. I want to see you talk to.
Maybe this is the next step for me,
You know
and
what?
you're the one who's going to organize it.
Everything Rachel.
There we go.
Y'all hear that Showtime basketball? Y'all hear that Showtime basketball? BD, you hear me? Brian, I know you listening somewhere back. I know you and Church got the mics on somewhere. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Carl Rich. You know what I'm saying? Let's get it. Let's get it. Everything Rachel, I'm telling you.
There we go. Well, look, maybe by the time you and I are sitting here next year, I'll be doing more of that stuff. Look, it's a big world out there. I'm interested in all of it. I do think you should not sell your arena short. I know that all you guys want to be in 6 different things. And as you said, athletes want to be entertainers want to be athletes, politicians want to be, so-and-so's got like a new album out when you're like, you should not be having an album, like that kind of thing. But don't sell short. This world is fascinating.
It is.
And there is nothing like the NBA in particular.